informed and take action around. I want to thank you so much for joining us so you can learn more about what's at stake with the proposed federal budget, which you've probably heard about in the news. And we're going to go ahead and get started. So our agenda this evening is for me to welcome you. Welcome. I'm Jamise with We Are California. We're going to have a performance in just a moment. Then we're going to hear a little bit about what We Are California is, a growing movement that you'll hear about shortly and what we've been up to since Election Day. We're going to share more about the federal budget and what's at stake in this moment. Not only what's at stake, but what we can do about it, what we can do to take action to impact the outcome and support our communities. We're going to have a little swag giveaway of We Are California swag. So for those who stay on through the full meeting tonight, we're going to choose some lucky folks at the very end to win some We Are California swag. And then we also want to answer any questions that you have that come up through the course of what we share tonight. So we'll do a little bit of Q&A for those who have questions. So want to thank you again for joining us this evening. It is so critical that you are here, and we know that you are here representing not only yourself, but also so many others in your community that you impact. And so we're so glad you're here tonight to learn about the budget and how we can take action. So I'm going to turn it over to Maisha Rice, also known as Ocean. She is a nationally recognized spoken word poet and well-respected San Diego activist who blends words with action to build a society where all can thrive and be treated with dignity. So I'm turning it over to you, Maisha. Let's go.
Let's go. The repeated threat to our safety is not a quiet one. It rumbles and quakes with blatant disregard, the ground disappearing from under our feet, our solid foundation swapped with quicksand. The whistle of superiority rips the roofs from our homes, slashing programs from our schools and healthcare. The grip of greed squeezes the air from our communities, suffocating our families only to line their pockets with money. They daydream for our downfall, but they must not know. We breathe and regenerate in the face of the schemes. We pick up the pieces like mustard seeds, alchemize the chaos and cacophony, unveil every lie, clear the smoke over every headline to build up something new. With calloused hands and resilient spirits, we build something unbothered by bad bee tantrums, something bricked with sweat and bravery. We plant strong roots of peace that grab and strangle their delusion for today and every single tomorrow until the end of time. Do you hear the clock yelling for us to move, to sound the alarm when the math ain't mathing and the logic ain't either? To be a war cry in Morse code in native tongues, to be the author of our own narratives, to be beacons of justice and truth. We, the people, are both the promise and the answer. History, progress, and power are in the palm of our hands. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Maisha. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Welcome, Lydia.
Hello, everyone. I have the honor of talking about We Are California. My name is Lydia. I am from beautiful east side of Los Angeles, and I'm here to share a little bit about We Are California before we get into the budget. We Are California is a movement of people and organizations across California, all the way from the lands of the Yurok people along the northern border to San Diego, South Central to the San Joaquin Valley, who are standing up to corporations and billionaires to build a state where everyone thrives, not just the wealthy, not the ones that just trying to take control of our democracy, our schools, our national parks, and everything that belongs to us, the people. Our mission is to build a bigger, broader tent to organize communities to stand together against the billionaires and bigots that are trying to divide us by building people power in communities across the state. We believe that together we can build bold policies that make it so everyone can thrive in California, regardless of the color of their skin, what's in their wallet, or where they were born. Now let's talk about our budget. Budgets are values. One of the things that We Are California does is stand up for our values. What elected leaders choose to fund or take money away from represents our government's values and our values. Do we value affordable care in all its forms for our loved ones and seniors? I saw some doctors, some nurses, some first responders in the chat sharing their stories. Do we value a state of the art education for our children and clean air and water for everyone? Or are we a society, a government that values funding for prisons and detention of our neighbors and loved ones? How a government raises funds for the programs and services that we all use also represents our values. Is the budget putting the burden on working class people and communities in working class neighborhoods? Or is it making those with extreme wealth pay their fair share finally? Take a moment to think about the programs and services you, your loved ones, and your neighbors value. Buses, schools, doctors, what is it that you value? Now, we'll talk about the conditions that we're facing. Clearly, many of us are here today, and almost everybody knows someone who would be directly affected or are they themselves affected by the historic cut. The recently passed House budget bill would cut $880 billion from Medicaid, called Medi-Cal here in California, taking doctor's visits, medication, and care away from our families, friends, children, and parents. It would force more people in our communities to go hungry by cutting $230 billion from CalFresh SNAP at a time when food costs are through the roof and keep rising every single day. Don't tell me I had to buy eggs this morning. And lastly, it would further starve our classrooms of the teachers and resources they need by cutting $330 billion in funds, forcing youth in all of our neighborhoods like mine into overcrowded classrooms and crushing many of these youth future opportunities. All of this to line the pockets of billionaires like Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, and others in the 1% who support the agenda of billionaires first, veterans last, billionaires first, children and seniors last, billionaires first, workers last. That's not what we're here to do today. We're here to say that we are California and we are built different. And we're going to fight for a budget where people come first, a California where everyone has the care they need, an affordable place to call home, and the programs and services that our neighborhoods deserve and that we pay for. Now, let's talk about the attack specifically in California. This fight is an existential threat to our country, our state, and is an attack on every poor and working class Californian. Don't get it twisted. Over 30% of our budget comes from federal dollars. And we know that almost 15 million people in California rely on Medi-Cal and programs like SNAP and CalFresh. That's 38% of all Californians, nearly 4 in 10. And we also know that the majorities are slim to make this a reality. And we can defeat them if we rally together. Now I'll talk about how we're holding the line to do just that. We are California members across the state sprung into action with just a few days notice, some of us just a few hours notice, to fight for our communities. Many of our neighborhoods, some of them being the most impacted and most vulnerable over the many years, our community members rose and started to pass out know your rights information to protect our immigrant communities and also engage in stopping the federal budget cuts, right? Over 1,400 We Are California members sent emails or called their reps, and 150 We Are California member organizations, shout out to all of the organizations here today, signed our joint letter opposing the budget proposal, and also turned out hundreds of people to press conferences in San Diego, Orange County, and the Central Valley. But despite our efforts, the House passed the bill, supported by these billionaires, these bigots, and bullies that stay hating on our communities, that advance the budget resolution that really is going to drive millions of their own constituents into poverty and desperation. The final vote was very close, 217 to 215, with every Democrat voting no and all but one Republican voting yes, passing by a razor thin margin. And the fight is just getting started. I'm going to hand it over to my colleague and comrade Chris, who will provide more details on the budget proposal that recently passed the House and give you the latest news.
Great. Thank you, Lydia. It's an honor to be with you all this evening, and I'm going to talk a little bit about what's at stake and what's being proposed at the federal level, what we think that means for California, and then we'll talk a bit more about even what that means and where there are calls to action. So let's just talk a little bit about what's at stake. So when we think about federal funding and what comes to California, federal funds make up over 1/3 of the funding that the state spends in any given year. So about 34%. That's about $170 billion in federal funds that come into the state of California. So we are very intertwined with the federal government. The state doesn't just operate alone. And on the next slide, you'll see that the vast majority of that is coming in for funding for Medicaid, or what we call Medi-Cal here in California, which is funding for healthcare coverage for people and households with low incomes, people with disabilities, seniors, etc. And so the vast majority of this is funding coming in for healthcare coverage for the folks who need it most. The rest of it's also largely coming in for other safety net programs. So for instance, federal dollars are 99% of CalFresh funding, which is food assistance that's provided to people through EBT cards and other sorts of ways. There are 14 to 15 million people on Medi-Cal. There are over 5 million Californians who rely on CalFresh. And these are the two major areas in the House budget resolution that are outlined as areas for cuts. And so that's why this is so important, both because it would take away vital public supports and services and cash assistance and healthcare for people who need it most, and also because these are big dollar amounts and the state government ability to backfill the losses would be difficult, and so that's just something we all have to realize in terms of what's happening with the federal proposals. Now let's talk a little bit about that budget resolution that was passed in Congress and the House. I think the first thing to understand is that it starts from a place of providing tax breaks and handouts for high-income households. People making more than $360,000 a year and corporations would be getting $4.5 trillion in handouts through the first place that this resolution starts. It also would add $200 billion in additional spending for the deportation machine that the Trump administration and Republicans in Congress are seeking to advance. And then what they're trying to do is mitigate the costs of that by imposing cuts on Medicaid or Medi-Cal, totaling up to $880 billion, to food assistance, totaling up to $230 billion, and in education programs, things like school meals, funding for low-income students, special education programs, totaling $330 billion. And these are directives that the Trump administration, the House budget resolution is giving to Congress, saying we want to see up to these amounts. And that's the debate that's happening now. But I think the important thing is to understand these are all about offsetting these handouts and tax breaks for high-income households. Next slide. So these are the folks that voted, as Lydia was saying earlier, for the House budget resolution. And I think it's really important to note that many of these folks took a very tough vote that's actually at the detriment to that would harm their own a vast majority of their own residents. So, for instance, Valadeo in the Central Valley, more than 2/3 of the residents in his district are actually eligible for Medi-Cal. There are other folks here on this screen who have large percentages of their district that are eligible for Medi-Cal, that are reliant on food assistance through CalFresh, and they all took votes in this instance to actually give tax breaks and handouts to wealthy people and corporations at the expense of folks who need healthcare and food assistance. So let's talk a little bit about who wins from these billionaire handouts. As I said earlier, folks making more than $360,000 a year, literally everybody below that actually would see a tax increase. So that's one thing to understand, like literally middle income, upper middle income, low income, everybody sees a tax increase while everybody else is seeing a sizable tax break. There's over 14 million Californians who are eligible for Medi-Cal. There's 5.5 million that are eligible for CalFresh. And I think one of the things to understand most fundamentally about this budget resolution and what it's trying to do is it is a massive wealth transfer from people who most need assistance from the public sector, who are working, trying to make ends meet, trying to make our high cost of living state viable, and a massive wealth transfer into the hands of folks who are very high income corporations, and a massive wealth transfer that sort of rigs the system permanently in one direction. And that's what this is about. And in order to make that all even more understandable, it's now my pleasure to hand it over to Brian Molina, who's going to talk a bit more about what this means for all of us. Over to you, Brian.
Thank you, Chris. What's up, y'all? I'm Brian Molina with Cali Calls. Now, we just heard a lot of numbers, so let's dive into what this budget could look like in real life and talk about how this budget is really just a transfer of wealth. A transfer of wealth means taking resources from everyday people and giving them to the ultra wealthy. Transfers of wealth happen in their most dramatic form when large tax breaks are given to people who don't need them, like big corporations and the extremely rich. Now, when rich people and corporations don't pay their fair share of taxes, there's less money in the system for our government to spend on essential programs that we depend on and use every single day, like healthcare, public schools, critical safety net programs. So what does this mean? This means that tax breaks and handouts for the rich are paid for and paid by directly extracting wealth, resources, and quality of life from everyday people in working class communities. Now, make no mistake, this is not normal. This budget is extreme. These proposed tax breaks for the wealthy at this scale are unprecedented, and this could perhaps be the largest transfer of wealth in human history, giving birth to the world's first class of trillionaires. There has never been a trillionaire to ever walk the face of Earth before. So how does this manifest in the real world? What does this look like in your community when a transfer of wealth takes place at this scale? These policies manifest quietly into two different extremes: extreme poverty on one side and extreme wealth on the other. And this is what is produced as a result. Don't let them lie to you. Transfers of wealth take from us and give to the ultra rich. This is what makes the existence of a middle class, the dreams of owning a home, the dreams of upward mobility, raising a family, or going to college increasingly less and less attainable for the average person. Now, those were hella big numbers, and numbers this large are almost impossible to comprehend. So let's put this into perspective. It would take the average person in California working full time at minimum wage with no breaks, no sick days, and no holidays, just about 29,115 years to reach just $1 billion. And to make the math easier on myself, I didn't even take taxes out of that. Now, to further put this into perspective for the fancy folks, if you take the same example, but someone who is making a healthy salary of $100,000 a year, it would still take about 10,000 years or 133 lifetimes to reach 1 billion. And to those super curious, If you multiply those numbers by 1,000, then you'll get to your first trillion. Now, with this $4.5 million, trillion dollar tax cut that we're giving to the rich, we talked about what type of world a budget can produce. So let's imagine, instead of giving this 4.5 trillion in tax breaks to the rich who don't need it, these are just some of the things that we could have. We could end homelessness in America. We could provide permanent supportive housing for every single person on the streets today for an estimated 380 billion. We could eliminate everybody's credit card debt on this call and the entire country, which would provide assistance and create a massive economic boom for all Americans. We could eliminate the number one cause of bankruptcy in this country, which is medical debt, at an estimated 220 billion. And on top of that, just to make it good, we could provide universal free, tuition-free university for all Americans. And if we added all of these numbers up, these massive structural reforms that would massively increase the quality of life for all Americans, these all combined only arrive at about 1.8 trillion. Nowhere near the 4.5 trillion number that we're giving to the rich. So I just want folks to imagine, even though these are just estimates, imagine a world today where no one is homeless, where everyone has a free education, their debts are erased. And just imagine what we could do with the remaining 2.6 trillion we would have left over after this. So I want you to imagine, how would you like to see this money spent? And what values would your budget have? Now, after seeing the values expressed in the Republican congressional budget, let's talk about the values of We Are California and why we're here today and the world that we want to build. We believe in a California where everyone belongs and has the freedoms and the resources to thrive. We believe all Californians, no matter your race, your income, your identity, your sexual orientation, we believe all Californians deserve a good paying job, dignity, healthcare, good schools, and a safe, affordable place to call home. And we have the money to do this. And we believe in holding the bigots, the billionaires, and the bullies accountable and making sure that they pay their fair share of taxes. Now, that was a lot. So with that being said, it's my honor. I'd like to pass it over to our special guest speaker, who's a We Are California member, community leader, and Los Angeles resident, Chris, to talk about the real life impacts that these proposed cuts to Medicaid would have on her and her community. Thank you.
Hi, were you referring to me?
Sorry, Chris.
Oh,
Sorry. Yeah, sorry about that.
that's okay. Hi, my name is Chris, and I'm honored to be here, and I just want to share how these cuts would affect me on a personal level. I grew up here in LA, and single mom working two jobs, and she still wasn't able to afford insurance, medical insurance, and because we had Medi-Cal, I was able to get the medical care that practically saved my life. I am severe asthmatic, and I've had severe asthma since I was a child. So for me and for my mom, it was crucial for me to have to be able to have Medi-Cal. I was in the hospital multiple times every month for years, and without having that, having Medi-Cal, I don't know what would have happened to me. I don't know if I would have been able to survive having that illness, and it's still helping me today. I'm a substitute teacher, and I do not qualify for medical insurance with the school district. So for me, it is crucial to still have it. I was hospitalized in 2020 with severe asthma, and it took me several years to recover. And I was able to get a specialist that was able to get me back to health. And all this I got because I have Medi-Cal. And so for me, it's very, very important for me on a personal level that I'm able to keep those benefits. And it also affects me personally as far as my mom goes. You know, now that she's older, she gets Social Security, and because of that, she's able to have housing. Without that, she wouldn't be able to pay rent. She's you know, a senior and she's disabled now, so it's very difficult. It would be very difficult for her to be able to get a job and work. Um, so it also affects my mom greatly, and it affects not only her housing, but you know, she gets help for food as well, um, and her health. She's been through some medical issues and struggles in the last several years because she's getting older and was hospitalized as well. And you know, having this this for her, it also helps us not stress out and worry about whether we're going to pay medical bills or rent, you know, and that's a huge deal for us. And I'm glad that we don't have to worry and stress out about that, you know, or we haven't ever as far as medical bills go. And you know, just to think that that would get taken away from us is very stressful, and I think about it a lot. And you know, I want to do everything I can to stop this from happening. And you know, that's why I wanted to speak here today, just to you know, let people know how much of an impact this is going to have on everybody um, that's relying on this. This is really, really personal and detrimental to us. And you know, I really hope that we can do something about this. But yeah, that's pretty much what I wanted to share with you all. So thank you for letting me share this personal information with all of you. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you.
Deep, deep gratitude to Chris for sharing your powerful story, which can be hard, but also so, so needed in this moment. Good evening, folks. My name is Alicia Olivares. I'm with Power California, calling today from Fresno. I'm here tonight because many of us on this call also have similar stories. Because as you said, Chris, this budget fight is personal. Like Chris, I'm also worried about my mom who struggles with severe diabetes. Losing her healthcare would absolutely be devastating. And let's be clear, should that Republican budget pass, what that actually means for folks like my mom is they actually might have their lives cut short. And this fight is not only personal, but it's scary. And in these scary moments, I know I have to reground to be able to do this work every day by knowing that I come from a lineage of folks who fought for me to be here today. My dad, who came to this country at the age of 19 with nothing but a duffel bag, but managed to build a life for us here. And I also know that each and every one of us on this call comes from a lineage of great-grandparents, grandparents, parents who fought like hell for you to exist today. They crossed borders, deserts, oceans, forced to leave or violently stolen from their homelands. Or many of our ancestors might have been the original people who are still fighting for their land back. And through all of it, we know our families and our communities still managed to build this country. We know they're the ones who actually make our country great by contributing not just our labor, because we literally built this country, but our culture, our food, our music, our stories, and more than just survival. We know our ancestors and our families went on to build beautiful legacies of entire communities filled with tradition and joy and love. And they planted those seeds of love and care and joy in you and me today to continue to fight this. And when I think about all of that that had to happen for all of us, I think they said there's 300 people, to be on this Zoom call today against the odds. As scary as this moment is, I think of one word, which is grateful. Grateful to be on here with 300 people from across California, from San Diego to the Bay, from different backgrounds, religions, cultures, because we're choosing to live into that legacy that people laid out before us. And to not fall into the fear and the isolation, y'all, because of everything y'all just heard, because we wake up every day to the news, to the cynicism that's around us. That is what our opposition wants. They want us to be afraid, they want us to be fearful, and they want us to be isolated. But I'm grateful tonight for the folks who showed up in spite of all of that, to choose hope, to choose possibility, and to choose change for our people, because that is not easy. And so tonight, I know a lot of folks have been asking, we have 3 requests from people to continue to build forth on this legacy, to build the community power we need, to fight back these greedy billionaires, and to take action needed to protect our folks. The first thing, if we go to the next slide, use your voice. Call or email your congressional representative every day. Every day, y'all. Let them know we need champions in Congress who are going to stand up to those greedy billionaires who are trying to rob our healthcare. Our representative must lead Congress to oppose any budget that's going to take away our healthcare. And that's the bottom line, right? And we want to let them know come next election, Californians won't forget where folks stood, where our congressional leaders stood when we were fighting for our lives. And folks can drop in the link. You can email your representative today. 2, educate others, y'all. 1 in 4 people will lose essential life-saving supports. Either you know somebody or you know somebody that's going to be impacted. Every conversation matters, and ask folks to do it every day. We need to be relentless. It is going to be, yes, 1 email is going to matter, 1 call is going to matter, but we want their office phone numbers to be ringing all day and their email boxes full. The third thing is show up. If you follow that link tree or the QR code, there's in-person actions throughout the state of California. So if you're in San Diego, follow that link. I want to know who's attending. If you're in Inland Empire, drop in the chat if you're planning on attending. We got one in Orange County. We need Orange County. We need Los Angeles, Central Valley, and there's also going to be an action in the Bay. So I want you to drop in the chat. There's other ways. There's letters, there's calls, actions that we'll be having next week. Volunteer with us. We'll be launching our phone banks again to get out the word with other folks, educating. Follow us on social media to share this information. Every action matters. And come in person next week to build that community, right? To lean into the joy, the care, the action that's going to build the community power we need to win. Because at the end of the day, we outnumber them. And join the We Are California movement and show our elected leaders that billionaires are not California. We are California. And I want to pass it to, I believe I'm passing it to Carla. Thank you. Have a good evening, y'all.
All right, friends. So we have a call to action. Thank you for telling us what we can do. And I'm reminded these next 100 days, this administration is going to have a lot of concentrated power, but they are not. They do not have all the power. We have the power. They're going to try and fast track things because it all is about to start coming home to roost. They're already getting pushback. So what we do right now will set up for what we can do going forward to block them because we have power. I'm reminded of a mantra a dear friend Jung-Hee Choi shared with us over the weekend. When we say to ourselves, I'm not powerless, we need to remember we are powerful. When I feel like I'm alone, no, we stand together. When I feel like, oh, they're trying to divide us, no, we are California. And that is what we're going to do together next week in San Diego, in Orange County, in LA, in Ventura, in Central Valley, the Bay Area, Sacramento. We're going to bring the fight right to their doorstep. And I will see you on the picket line, and stay on, because now we have two things. We have a Q&A. A bunch of folks ask questions. We want to give them a chance to hear the response to their questions. And then I have a swag giveaway. Can somebody put me on camera? Because I want folks to see what exactly, as the weather outside is frightful, these We Are California shirts